on, folks? Nate here at Two Wheel Dyno Works, and today I'm just wrapping up our R&D for the slip-on mapping that we have built now for these new 2024 ZX6Rs. Just like on our ZX10, we've gone ahead and partnered with our friends over at M4 to get some exhaust systems for these new 2024 model ZX6s, and we've already got the M4 slip-on installed. It removes the actual box down here that is the majority of the muffling that is done on the stock muffler and mid-pipe design, and it essentially just slides directly into the header there with a clamp, which is a perfect, easy installation. This is obviously a low mount system. It's not coming back up here where the stock one was. As you can see, the mounting point was there for the stock muffler, and it actually saves quite a bit of weight, and the performance improvements are noticeable. Now, just a quick recap, we've already built mapping for the stock exhaust system, so I'll show you the baseline one more time for where this bike comes in bone stock from Kawasaki, and then where it is once we've gone ahead and flashed the ECU and properly unrestricted the throttle and gotten the ignition timing mapping all smoothed out, and then I'll show you where this new M4 system, which is just a slip-on, go ahead and stacks up compared to that. So that run 2 is our baseline on this ZX6, how it was bone stock. And then run 31 there for our stock mapping is 115 horsepower and about 49.25 foot-pounds of torque. Now again, we've already talked about this, but the gains at 13,000 at peak horsepower, only about 3, but right out there at 14,000 RPMs near the rev limiter, because of the secondary throttle plate and ignition timing restrictions, there's a whopping 20 horsepower left on the table from the stock mapping on these bikes. Now let's compare the stock properly tuned and dialed in bike versus the M4 slip-on with our custom mapping in place. All right, and as you can see there, the same run 31 is our final run on the stock exhaust system with our custom mapping, and the green run there, run 19, is our final run for the slip-on. Now, there's actually very little change in the performance of the bike from about 7,500 RPMs all the way to up to about 13,000 RPMs. You can see where you're trading maybe 1 horsepower or so around 8,500 and around 10,500, but there are decent gains at the very bottom of the RPM range between like 5,000 and 7,500, and at the top end of the RPM range where the stock exhaust system was causing it to fall off a little bit more, between about 13,000 and the limiter. And then just so you guys can see that there, it's a little bit hard with it all stacked up, but you're about 3 horsepower and 2 foot-pounds of torque there, about 6,000 RPMs. And if I highlight the top end there around 14,000, you're about 4 or 5 horsepower, and the same about 1.5, maybe 2 foot-pounds of torque out there near the limiter. Now, obviously, those are not enormous performance improvements, nor do we expect to see them. The gains off the bottom below 7,500 are from where the stock exhaust valve, or the flapper valve, was still partially closed with the stock muffler installed, and then obviously at the top end, just where the stock muffler is simply too restrictive, so you get a few more ponies up there. But none of that changes the fact that there's still a huge catalytic converter shoved at the end of these headers. This updated header design from Kawasaki to meet Euro 5 compliance, it looks a shockingly lot like the new header design on the ZX10s, and we all know that those are a significant restriction through the mid-range on those bikes as well. So now we've got our mapping wrapped up for the slip-on exhaust that pretty much everybody's going to pick. So let's face it, if you're going to get a slip-on, you're going to get a shorty low mount like this one from M4. We're going to go ahead and get the full system from M4 installed that they've gone ahead and sent us as well for testing. And I'm 99.9% certain we will see significant gains, again, larger than we're seeing now with just the slip-on, once we have the full system installed and we get the mapping properly dialed in. Now, one of the questions I've been asked about this bike dozens of times already is it actually any better than the old ZX6? The old ZX6 has essentially been out from 2019 all the way up until the 2023 models, and they've changed the cams on the new model, they've changed the exhaust header slightly, they've changed the inlet and the airbox slightly, and the big question is, was that all just for emissions compliance, or is the bike actually any better anywhere, or is it worse? Well, now we have some solid data now that we have this M4 slip-on installed, because we've done a ton of these already on the 19 to 23 models, and I'll show you an average run off of a 19 ZX6 with this exact same M4 slip-on versus this new 2024. So what we've got here is a 2019 ZX6 with this exact same M4 slip-on installed. That is what you see there with run 13, which is the red line, which is making 116 horsepower and 47 foot-pounds of torque. Now, run 19 is that final run from our slip-on testing for this new 2024 model, and as you can see, it makes more everywhere until about 13,250 RPMs, at which point the old cam design carried on just a little bit further before these ones fell off. But there is significant gains at every part of the RPM range, all the way up to 13,025 RPMs, literally everywhere. In fact, if I highlight the meat of the RPM range there, as you can see right about 9,700 RPMs, we've gone from making about 79 horsepower to about 85, which is a gain of 6 horsepower, and from 42 foot-pounds of torque to 46, which is 10% more torque through the mid-range. And as Kawi stated in their press release for these bikes when they came out and they were announced like 2 weeks ago, the entire goal of the airbox and the cam design was not only to meet emissions compliance for Euro 5, but it was also to provide more mid-range torque. Well, they've actually provided more mid-range torque by quite a bit, but they've also succeeded in providing more horsepower all the way to the top end of the RPM range. That little bit of power that you're going to see from the old design at the very top end out at 14,000 versus the new design here just isn't really power that anybody riding these bikes on the streets ever going to experience or notice the difference. What they are going to feel the difference of is the improved power all the way to that 13,000 and a quarter RPM range, which is great. And I can tell you firsthand, having ridden a whole bunch of these, that it's definitely noticeable and you feel it when you're riding these bikes on the road. Now, obviously, we have our ECU Flash for these new 2024 ZX6s on sale on our website for $329.99, and I am going to go ahead and get this one off the dyno now and over onto our lift to go ahead and get that M4 full exhaust system installed. I'll be sure to share the results with you guys either later today or tomorrow for that full M4 exhaust testing that we're about to do. So if you guys have any questions about getting these bikes flashed or any other bike flashed and properly tuned and dialed in, don't hesitate to give us a call or shoot us an email at support@tooldynoworks.com. We are always happy to help and hope you guys have a fantastic weekend.